Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is our Aries 3 video, our Aries 2 video. So, the last video that just happened, there had been a mistake that happened in the video, and the Saturn card snuck in to the sun's location. I'm not really sure how that happened, other than I did do a reading earlier on that morning before I shot the video, and I did use the stars divine in that reading. And I'm pretty good at like keeping my Decan cards separated and in the categories. However, the Saturn card did come up in that reading, and then it somehow snuck into my Decan pile. So whether that was it accidentally got in there, or I grabbed the S, like grabbed the Saturn seeing the S and then just threw it down, either which way it goes, that card accidentally got into the mixes of things and it wasn't supposed to be. So here is the real card that was supposed to be in that. But I just want to remind everybody that this is just a really laid back practice. You know, mistakes can easily happen, especially during Mercury in retrograde. And the whole video, while I was filming it, I felt really weird and I felt really discombobbled and confused. And I kept thinking that something wasn't right on the table, and it was the Saturn card. So instead of me stopping and checking, I was short on time and I kind of just worked through it, did the video, and then afterwards realized that the Saturn card was in the wrong position. It wasn't even supposed to be in the mix of things. So my apologies on that. I tried my best to edit the video and edit it out without having to reshoot the entire video. But because this is like there is very specific times that these need to be posted. Most of the time it doesn't leave very much room to reshoot a video, so I was unable to do that. So I edited it out the best that I could. However, it is what it is, and like I said, it's not the end of the world. These are actually extra cards that I threw in just to kind of have a little bit more of the understanding of the underlying energies. At the end of the day, the cards that really matter are just these three, right? The Hermetic Dawn and then the RW. All of these are extra cards that I throw in that aren't even really part of a common, typical deck and walk, right? So always keep that in mind. These three cards and these three cards are the ones that you really honestly need to focus on the most. All right, so with that being said, let's continue on. And let's revisit some of these. So, like I said, these three are staying the same. These are all the same still. We're still in Aries. We're still having that fire energy. We still have, and we're still in the cardinal season, right? So, these all remain the same. The Emperor, because he is an Aries, because he represents Aries, he's going to be staying for as long as we're in Aries season. So, he's staying too. But these two cards are the ones that are are changing, right? These are the ones that we're working through. This is the Decan card, and then this is just the extra energy that encompasses that time, the major that matches the minor, right? Or coincides with the minor, I guess is what we would say. All right. The other thing that I wanted to mention that I've noticed, and like remember, this is only our third video. We have a long journey to go. We have an entire year ahead of us. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is that this honestly all comes down to personal opinion and preference. But I've noticed the deck and wheel that everybody's using, the one that I show on my tablet. So this one right here. This one's based on modern astrology. Modern astrology has removed cusps. For ever since, astrology up until that change happened, cusps were always taken into consideration. This wheel does not take the cusps into consideration because this is based on modern astrology, right? Now, Susan T. Chang's, in her book, the wheel that she provides takes cusps into consideration. Now, I've been noticing as I've been applying these cards into my life and situations that this wheel is more accurate. This wheel, in my opinion, is not as accurate. Yeah, it's colorful and it's beautiful and it's easier to follow. However, I find that its dates are slightly off to the energies that I'm experiencing when I'm experiencing them. This is much more on cue. So we need to determine, and I would really like you guys, I invite you guys to write it in the comments. I invite you guys to message me. If you're on Instagram, throw me a message. What do you want to do from this point? Do you want to switch? Because we're at the very beginning and we can make adjustments, right? Do we want to switch to Susan T. Chang's Decan wheel, which I'm finding much more accurate? Or do we want to stick to following this, the modern astrology Decan wheel? Either which way, it honestly doesn't matter, but I'm just saying that I'm noticing this one is much more accurate as opposed to this one. I'm leaning towards switching it up to this because the dates are a little bit different than what's showing in this one, right? So I'm voting for a switch to the Decan wheel in Susan T. Chang's book. You can, if you go onto my Instagram, I've already uploaded it into the chat and is available. So if you do not have this book, you can go onto my Instagram and get the actual copy of this on there. I took a picture of it out of the book, enhanced it, cleaned it up, and threw it on there. It's up to you guys, but we kind of need to make up our minds on that and what we're doing. So let me know what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what you want to do about that. But like I said, this is based on modern astrology. This is based on astrology that still includes the cusps, which I'm noticing is much more accurate energy. So I'll leave that there. You guys got to think about that. So for today, I'm going to just show this one, but these dates, I'm going to kind of leave them up in the air because if we decide that we're going to switch to the Decan wheel in Susan's book, these will kind of change a little bit, I think. I'm not sure. I have to look and see if we're at the cusp point or not. So we're still dealing with the fire element, right? So right here. We're still in Aries, which is right there. We're still in the cardinal month. We're in the last, so it's going to change. The next video, this cardinal card is going to change to fixed. We were dealing with the sun card. It is the Three of Wands is the Decan, that the card energy that we're looking at. The Emperor is the representation of the Aries energy, right? This is all the same cards as right here, except this is the Golden Dawn associated cards. So this is their sun, which is Lord of the Fire of the World. The Three of Wands, which is Lord of Established Strength. And then the Aries card, which is Son of the Morning. This is our moon card that I will be flipping in a few minutes when we switch all these cards around. And then this is the card that got away from the last video, which is just the sun, which represents the sun card, right? So that's our solar energy. And that is so, doesn't that look like a real sun? It's so like, beautiful card. Okay, I'm just gonna get situated a little bit, straightened out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read about the sun because we didn't get that to see that in the last video. So I'm going to talk about that card and read about that card. And I'm going to talk about these energies and how they, how I noticed that they popped into my life. All right, so when we look at the Stars Divine Oracle, what she has written here is the sun is the center around which all revolves. It is the life force, vitality, and identity. It radiates, shines, and pours its energy in a way impossible to ignore. The ultimate fire. It represents will, creativity, and a healthy ego. All right, so definitely the energy that has been happening over the last 10 days. Other than the wrenches that Mercury RX has thrown into this situation, things have been pretty smooth sailing. If Mercury RX wasn't happening, this last 10 days would have ran like a well-oiled machine. And I do honestly feel that way. There has been a little hiccups and a few bumps, but a lot of that is pertaining, like I said, to Mercury RX that's happening, right? So I feel though the majority of the energy that has been happening over the last 10 days has been very much this. It has been, there's been a lot of sparks of creativity coming forward for me. A lot of things from my past that I enjoyed doing artistically are kind of popping back up into my mind. And I'm having this like urge to fulfill this artistic desire that I have that has kind of been lying dormant for very many years. So it's nice that that's come back. Things have been pretty good. Things have been happening. It's been sunny, bright, and beautiful. Other than a few days has been a little overcast, but a majority of it I felt like has been like that very nice, happy sun energy. Everyone seems to be pretty much in a pleasant mood for the most part. And I feel like it's kind of like what's been happening, that very much that energy of just sitting and looking out over your domain or your household and just kind of enjoying, the everyday things that happen and just the organization and the system that you've put in place, right? And I do feel very much that those are the energies that have been coming through 100%. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I did not mention in the other video, and I want to touch on it before I switch it out, is the Three of Wands and Hermetic Tarot. If we notice, remember in the Two of Wands, this hand was armored. In the Three of Wands, this hand is not armored. It is not wearing an armored glove, which I thought was really quite interesting. Like the battle is done, right? And now we're just sitting back and looking at our kingdom and what we've created for ourselves. You'll probably hear my kitty cat. She's playing with her ball and she's going to make a lot of noise. I'm not sure if the mic will cancel it out or not. If it doesn't, you'll hear her and she'll just be a background noise. But she is very content and happy and playing with her ball right now. All right, so let's switch these out and let's look at the new energies that are coming forward for the next 10 days roughly. Okay, so the emperors are staying. These cards are staying, right? So this L shape is staying. These ones are the ones that are getting changed out. So the Three of Wands is being switched to the Four of Wands. The Sun is being switched to the Empress, right? And let's move these alongside and change these two. I'm just trying not to get my piles all messed up. The thing is, there's cards everywhere. Between the readings that I do with my customers, on top of this, on top of YouTube videos where I'm talking about new decks coming in and working with that, on top of my own personal practice. Like right now, I'm working with 3 decks in my own personal practice. There are stacks of cards and decks everywhere across my house. It is insane right now. All right, so here's our Empress card. Here is our Four of Wands. Okay, these are the ones that are going. And then we're also going to talk about these other energies that are in place because we are having a switch with those extra cards that are there. So I'm just going to lay them up here for right now. We'll go back to those in a minute. Let's straighten this all up. And we're switching the tricky Sun card with Venus. And our moon right now is the waxing crescent. That's what's happening. All right, and we're just going to, I'm going to look at Susan's book right here. So we have the Empress in place. We have the Four of Wands in place. We have the Empress in place. We have the Four of Wands in place. We have the Emperor, which is really awesome because we're dealing with that duality of the feminine and masculine, right? We got the Empress and the Emperor. And our Decan ruler is Venus. Okay, it starts April 9th to 10th. She's got that cusp kind of in there, right? And it's ending April 18th to 19th Once again, there's a little bit of that cusp happening. So that probably doesn't line up with that Decan wheel, that colorful Decan wheel that I was telling you about. All right. Now, this is the cards for the next 10 days or so. Let's look at that Decan wheel and see what it's saying. Okay, so in this Decan wheel, they're placing it from April 11th to the 20th. And in Susan's book, because she's taking those cusps into consideration, she's got April 11th to April 20th. So these dates are lining up right now. This is the time, like I said, if we're going to make a little bit of an adjustment and just base everything off of this wheel, now's the time to do that because the dates are still, they're lining up, right? It was the last ones that just happened where the cusp dates were a little bit different. So we need to make that decision. So like I said, leave your thoughts or opinions in the comments and I'll kind of make a decision based on the majority, right? If we're going to just stick with this one, or if we're going to keep using this colorful one here. All right. So these are the new energies that are in place. Like I said, I'm not going to visit these because we already visited them and talked about them and did all of that stuff in the first video. We're going to just talk about what's happening right here. Well, I think it's really cool to see the Empress and the Emperor sitting across from each other and like that, almost kind of like that. I feel like it's like a union card in the middle. What I feel it's like they're both like sitting in their kingdom. And I think that that's really neat. I know that I've heard that people refer to the fact that the two cards in the center, the two characters in the center, sorry, are supposed to be the Empress and the Emperor. So I thought that was kind of cool, where it's like the two of them together on the card. But there are a few more figures down here playing. But I don't know, or celebrating, maybe not playing, celebrating. But that is an interesting concept, how there's very obviously those two characters centered, right? And then we have the Emperor and the Empress on either side. So I thought that was really an interesting concept to look at. Once again, we're in that Emperor energy still, so that very much that authority, that, control, that Emperor energy is still in place, right? We've got that right down here with the Hermetic card too. So we've got those happening right there. Those are kind of the underlining. Those are still the main energy of Aries, right? But let's take a look at this Four of Wands and the Empress card. And I'm going to look at Susan's book because I think the way she writes things is always quite interesting. Okay, so in Susan's book, she says, there has been the conquest, the Two of Wands. There has been the government, the Three of Wands. Now comes the ritual celebration that crowns and consecrates the reign. We have moved a step up in the hierarchy of needs, and our thoughts turn from survival and functionality to beauty and adornment. Perhaps this is what the Golden Dawn meant when they named the card Lord of Perfected Work. And then Crowley called it completion. So in Susan's book, she talks about the Four of Wands and how there's the bridal structure in the middle of the card, having to do with obviously a wedding ceremony. But it's also representing the couple's new home, right? And it's saying that the design structure is made from natural materials, right? The wood, the garland, it's all natural materials. So it will not last forever, right? It'll eventually break down and it'll eventually break down and go back to the earth, right? So it's representing that this moment will not last forever. However, right now it's happening and it's all about that hospitality and inviting people in, right? So it's not going to last forever, but right now it's happening. which is really quite a beautiful concept when you think about it and look at it. She goes on to talk about quite a bit of things in this book. The chapter on the Four of Wands, there's a lot more information that goes into it. But like I said, I'm just going to kind of keep this really easygoing and sweet and simple. So I'm not going to get into all of those details. She talks about how the fives are notorious for being out of balance. The fours offer a moment of temporary stability, or you can see the fours of being famously stagnant, like not much happening, just really quite calm and quiet and boring, right? And the fives obviously offer up that disruption, because at this point we're going to be leaving the wand energy, right? If we look at our Decan, we're leaving the wands and we're going into pentacles. So we will not see the wands again until the end of July and into August in that Leo energy, right? So that fire wand energy will not return until Leo season. So this is kind of our last chapter of that fiery wand energy until later on down the road, which is kind of nice to leave on the Four of Wands, right? But then we also know that when the Leo season starts, we're going to be starting with the Five of Wands, which is that disruptive energy, right? So we're going to be starting into a very strong return of the fire energy. So in Susan's book, she talks about when this card shows up, she notices that there tends to be a lot of like gatherings, birthday parties, anniversaries, celebrations of that sorts. But she talks about how interior decorating kind of tends to happen, like painting something or redecorating, stuff along those terms, as well as she said that it usually just shows up too with like visitors, people stopping by, coming over, stuff like that. And she talks about how it usually represents like a literal safe haven for her, whether that's motel rooms, rentals, place of temporary comfort in the middle of long transitions. That's very interesting that she says that, because I do feel with the solar eclipse that just happened yesterday, I feel like we're kind of like in limbo at the moment. Like there's a transition coming, there's a change happening, and it just hasn't happened yet. And I feel like we're kind of in that like that moment between the two changing of things, right? So it's very interesting that she speaks about that, how it's kind of like that just hanging out until that that transit happens. And I do feel that energy very much. So I think we are in a period of just kind of that quiet limbo happening. This week has been very quiet, and the next 10 days coming up seems to be really quiet. But in a week from that, so like not this week, but next week, things are going to start to kind of pump up again in about midweek. There's a lot of appointments, different things happening, stuff like that. There's different things coming forward. And I feel that like she said, that transition moment, that quiet period, and I do feel that very much. And I've never really looked at that before. It's interesting how that card, how that energy's kind of changed a little bit for me. It's still fairly the same, but it does have a very interesting change to it, as far as looking at it as like that, just that period of like that period of rest while the transitions are happening and things are falling into place. And I do agree with that. I do feel that from that card. All right, now let's look at the Hermetic. We've already visited the Emperor, so I'm not going to go back into him, but we're going to look at these two. And I'm going to read from the book. So for the Hermetic Dawn, the Four of Wands, we've got Lord of Perfected Work. And the Empress, we've got Daughter of the Mighty One, which is interesting, right? Because a lot of people view the Empress and Emperor as like man and wife, right? Whereas the Hermetic Tarot, and I'm getting ahead of myself, I haven't read out the book yet, but it's Daughter of the Mighty One, which it's like almost like his daughter. And there is quite an age difference between the two, right? If I pick them up and let's get in close and look at this. she looks much younger than him, right? But I guess back then, when a king did take his queen, she was a younger energy, right? She was a younger person, so that she could bear his sons and daughters. So I don't know. Like I think that's pretty interesting. Let's see what they say about it. Let's read the Hermetic book. All right. So the Four of Wands, Lord of perfected work. Two hands coming from the clouds on either side of the card clasp four crossed wands at the center. The two outside wands are topped by ram heads and the inner two wands by swan heads. Flames come from the point of junction. Above and below are small flaming wands which touch at the points of fire. The symbol for Venus and Aries appear at the top center and the bottom corners. The Four of Wands refers to the third decan of Aries ruled by Venus, thus Venus in Aries. And then it talks about angel names being written in Hebrew. All right, very interesting. So when we look at this card, we're seeing the four wands, right? Two have the ram heads, two have the swan heads. It's like two hands are meeting in the center, but I feel like they are of the same person. Like I don't feel like they're coming from two separate people. Very interesting, eh? Very interesting card. But it is like that meeting, right? That joining of energies. Very cool. All right, and then let's see what they say about the Empress, daughter of the Mighty One. The sign of Venus appears above the Empress and the sign of Libra, ruled by Venus, at the top of the card. The Empress is the Greek figure Aphrodite. The spiraling flames at her side represent her birth from water. The two stars overhead represent the zodiac that surrounds her. She holds a diamond scepter. The Empress has wings and is clothed in the sun. The Empress is the center of the Emperor. She has a black eagle at her feet, which is the counterpart of the alchemical eagle in the next card. The next card, they're meaning the Emperor. Above the eagle at the Empress' knees is the inverted crescent moon. All right, let's look at this up close. Very interesting. There's a lot going on this card. But when we look at the two together, there's that eagle that they're talking about. So the eagle's sitting in front of her, but here the eagle, he's stepping on the eagle. He's stepping on it or around it, above it, but it's definitely below him. It's very, very interesting. So much depth to these cards, right? In the symbolism and what they are. Very neat. I'm trying to see if there's any besides the eagle, I feel like those are the two those are the only two things that are very similar. I'm not seeing any other same things, right? Like she's got her arm on a pillar. She's holding an instrument. That instrument or pillar is not really seen in these cards. Another thing that comes to my attention is the fact that the eagle is like coming up to her, like being nurtured and cared for. Whereas in the Emperor card, it looks like it's being stomped down, dominated, and controlled, which is very much the two energies of each one of these cards, right? Very cool. All right, so those are those ones looked at. Now let's read about Venus and the Venus energy that's going to come in, which, like I said, is associated with that Empress energy. All right, so Venus. So the stars divine, she has Venus is the planet of love and beauty, harmony and balance are its attributes. Pleasure, bounty, sensuality, and the arts are within its realm. It seeks connection with others and supportive relationships. That's very interesting how it speaks about that, because remember we talked about the Four of Wands, how it's about that company coming, people coming and visiting, birthday parties, anniversaries, gatherings of sorts, right? So it's very interesting how that's very much the Venus energy, right? Because the Venus energy is tied with the Empress, but its energy is very reminiscent of the energy of the Four of Wands. So that's really cool too. When we look at this little extra card that I threw in over here, our moon cycle that we're in, it is the waxing crescent moon, and it's talking about having faith in your dreams, which I think is really kind of cool when you think about it, because a lot of it has to do with that creative energy coming forward, right? The Empress card really talks a lot about that creative force and that the arts and that nurturing creation energy. So that's really cool that that kind of ties into that, right? That is our cards for right now. I'm going to show you the extra cards. Remember, we have a few of those extra cards that are kicking around, those extra energies that we can tap into. In Susan's book here, let's look at the Decan wheel. So we're going from the Queen of Wands. We are transitioning now to the Knight or Prince of Pentacles. Whatever deck you're using has that, right? We're still in the Page or Princess of Pentacles, and we're still in the Ace of Pentacles energy. So let's take a look at that Knight of Pentacles. We're still dealing with the Page of Pentacles energy, right? We're still dealing with the Ace of Pentacles energy, but we're switching from that Queen of Wands energy, and we're now on that Knight of Pentacles energy. And in the Hermetic Tarot, like I said, the Ace of Pentacles energy is remaining. The Princess, which in the Hermetic Tarot is the Princess. In the RW, it's the Page. So they are remaining still in place. We've already visited those. And here we're switching from the Queen of Wands to the Knight of Pentacles, which is Lord of the Wild and Fertile Land. And we're going to read about him because this is our new card. So when I see the Knight of Pentacles, I always think about that hard work, right? He's on a draft horse. It's like about doing hard work. We've got the fields have been worked, right? We have all those rows have been placed. The field has been worked. And it's like he's holding that pentacle ready to plant it and put it out in that field. And I always think of this individual as a very hardworking individual, a grounded individual that is not afraid to take on the hard work. That's not afraid to get out there and do what needs to be done, and just accepts his role in that position and just does what is expected of him to be done, right? And doesn't really complain about it, doesn't really have any issues with it, because it's just who he is and it's what he's here to do. So that is my feelings on the Knight of Pentacles. Now, when we look at it in the Hermetic Tarot, we have kind of a similar energy happening in a way. But let's look at the book and see what they say in the book, because I'm interested on how they explain that. All right, so in here they have Knight of Pentacles, Lord of the Wild and Fertile Land, fiery part of earth. A warrior with a winged helmet is mounted on a horse dressed for battle. The warrior's shield and scepter both depict the hexagram. The field beneath the horse is fertile with ripened corn. Above the warrior is the head of a winged stag. And it talks about how it rules from the different signs, the different degrees, right? So that's all they kind of have for it. Their meanings is heavy, dull, laborious, patient and clever, methodical. So when I look at this card, yes, like I can see like that fertile fields, right? In the Knight of Pentacles, the fields have not been planted yet. They're ready. They're ready to be planted. It's like they're just about to start planting them. Where in this one, they've already been planted and they've already been growing for a little bit, right? Because we've already got ears of corn happening. kind of a similar energy, but I find the Knight of Pentacles and the RW to be a much more patient look to him, a much more like accepted, patient, taking his time to do it right. Where I find this is a little bit more movement, a little bit more faster paced energy, which is kind of cool. They don't talk very much about the stag energy, which I think is interesting because if you know anything about the Celtic stuff, that stag energy, that's an important energy. So it's weird that they put it in there, but they don't really touch on it much. And once again, I find like he's got two shields, right? Which is interesting. This kind of has more like, but the horse is stationary, which I think is interesting. Like he's ready to go, but the horse is stationary. The horse is not in movement, but he looks like he is. So I don't know, just interesting things to look at and to consider, right? Both are in armor, so both are in their full gear. However, we do not see any shields with the RWs. I don't know. Really quite interesting. Oh, I just noticed that the horse on the RW has two oak leaves and some acorns at his forehead, which are not in this. And then the interesting thing is we have those two trees in the background, which could be the two oaks, right? Like two oaks. I don't know, really interesting when you start looking at it really up close and detailed and really start looking at things. So it'll be interesting to see how this energy now plays into the next little bit, right? So remember, those are our extra cards. They're the ones that we can kind of tap into if we want to understand the energies a little bit more thorough. We also can just leave those out and not visit them. If you feel that those are overwhelming, don't even bother with them. Our main concentration, like I said, are these three and these three. This is what the Decan's all about. That's kind of what we're looking at. The other ones are just extras, just ways to tap into that energy and understand it a little bit better. So that is our Aries 3, which is very interesting. So like I said, the next Decan that happens, which is coming into place on April 21st to April 30th. So right now, this is the energy that will kind of be the way that it is until April 21st, right? We'll be switching out. And that time we're going to be visiting the pentacles. So that'll be really interesting. We'll get into that pentacle energy. And we're changing from Aries to Taurus, right? So that's our first kind of transition into a different sign. But yeah, so that's our next video. And like I said, remember guys, let me know in your comments what you want to do. If you want to keep following the modern astrology, or if you want to stick with Susan T. Chang's, which embraces the cusps. I personally, like I said before, I'm finding this to be more accurate. That one off of the web is a little off. I'm finding it off by a couple days. So, and I think that's obviously the cusps being taken into consideration, right? Whereas that last one they've been eliminated from. So let me know what you guys want to do. If I don't hear from anybody, I might make the choice myself and I might switch out to just using this. I can refer to the other one for the people if you still choose to follow along, so we can refer to that one. But I think I'm going to be following the dates on this Decan wheel. But like I said, I'm going to see what everybody has to say. So write in the comments, message me, whatever. Let me know what you guys want to do. And I'll go with the majority. And like I said, if I don't hear from anybody, I'll make that decision myself. All right. So this is what our next 10 days look like. This is the energy that's coming forward. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to have kind of like that a quiet period, kind of like that comfortable quietness of the Four of Wands, right? And I'm looking forward to visitors. I would love to have some visitors and have some company and have some different interesting things happen. Because like I said, I do feel like we're on the edge of a transition. Maybe it's just in my life. I'm not sure how everybody else is feeling in theirs, but I do know here there's been a very drawn out period of transition trying to take place, and it's just slow to fall into place and to get going. So I feel like this energy very much makes sense. And I'll see you guys on the next video, the next Decan. which is April 21st. We'll be switching it out and doing the next one. So, see you until then. Thank you for joining in.